It's our first live transmission of 2010 on this Sunday edition, January 3rd, 2010. That will certainly take some getting used to. We're going to have our third interview with one of the key eyewitnesses from the International Flight 253 that came in to Detroit on Christmas Day, and that the underwear bomber attempted to bring out of the air, reportedly. He will be joining us coming up in 20 minutes. Haskell, FBI, has changed account 4 times. Our story is the same since day one. And there have been some other developments in the case since he was last on with us Wednesday live. He'll be joining us coming up in the third segment. I have several large stacks of news here that I want to go over today, or attempt to cover. But one that was given to me when I got to the office today by the crew, because I encourage them to also search around for interesting news, is an article out of the Times of London. And, of course, we also simulcast all 6 days a week of my radio show online via television at prisonplanet.tv. Prisonplanet.tv viewers might want to tune in because you can see shots from the document cam of these articles I'm talking about. Microsoft seeks patent for office spy software. And driving into the office today with my stacks of news, I was thinking to myself, what is it I want to get into? The underwear bomber and the clear evidence that that's a false flag event to kick off several new wars in Yemen, Somalia, and to expand what's happening in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Should I get into the fact that the Democratic Party, even though it is destroying their election hopes for 2010, 2012, they don't care. Why are they going ahead with government-controlled, government-run health care? Which isn't socialism. That's bad enough. It's just highway robbery. Real liberals and socialists have finally read the bill and are saying higher taxes, less health care. And I was also looking at news from India, massive deaths there from freezing weather, which they never have in the areas of India that have been hit by freezing temperatures for a week. Freezing temperatures in Europe, freezing temperatures in North America, freezing temperatures in Asia, which is, of course, circumstantial evidence that the world is not overheating. You know, Al Gore, every time it gets hot, says, oh, look, global warming, when that's part of a normal cycle. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, look, it's record cold temperatures. Some of the coldest temperatures ever recorded this time. Europe, I have the headline here, coldest temperatures ever recorded for this time of year. I have another headline in Washington, D.C., biggest, deepest snowstorm in December history in Washington, D.C. But that doesn't matter. Weather is always changing. You're always having extreme weather. So because we're having extremely cold weather doesn't prove that man-made global warming isn't real. What does prove that it isn't real is that we have the ice core samples, we have the last 300 years of temperature recorded, and we know that this is moderately warming we've seen, and in the last 9 years we've seen a cooling, but that's a normal cycle. But that's not what I decided to get into first today. No, when I read this article right before I went on air, I decided to get a little bit into the technological enslavement system, the technocracy, the scientific dictatorship. So that is coming up right after the break. Stay with us. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us on this live Sunday broadcast, first live broadcast of 2010 on this January 3rd, Sunday edition. Thank you for joining us. We have one of the eyewitnesses of the underwear bomber flight joining us coming up for the third interview we've done with him. There's been some big new developments on that front with Kurt Haskell, as the FBI now has been forced for the multiple times, 4 times total, to change their story. They are now admitting that Mr. Haskell and his family and what the eyewitnesses are saying is correct and is accurate. So they've been caught in the middle of a cover-up. We'll get into that cover-up coming up in the next segment today. Also, the Democrats are in big trouble. There's a huge exodus out of their party, not just at the federal level in Congress, in the House and Senate, but also at the state level. There is going to be a backlash, the likes of which we've never seen before, from their move to hijack 1/7 to 1/6, depending on what numbers you look at, of the U.S. economy through government-run health care, this giant boondoggle, which even liberals are now upset about. They've actually read the bill. They're finding out it doesn't give them something, quote, for free. There's no such thing as a free lunch. What it gives them is something new to tax and control and dole out to the public who they want to make dependent on them. So that is coming up later in the broadcast as well. But the first story I want to get to is out of the Times of London today. And after I saw this story, I went and Googled it and looked it up. It turns out they previously reported on this, along with other publications, last year as well. And it reports that Microsoft seeks patent for office spy software. And when you see an article like this, it gives you a glimpse into the future. And if we go back a decade ago or longer ago, the predictions I made on the type of surveillance society we're going to be living under and living in, unfortunately, have come true. And before I get into this here briefly, before our guest joins us, Friday night, I went into a gas station to get a cup of coffee, and a man walked over to me, as often happens, and said, "Oh, I recognize your voice. You're Alex Jones here in Austin, Texas." And I said, "Yes, how you doing?" And he said, "Oh, I just recognized your voice." I said, "Great, have a nice day." And he said, "Hold on just a minute, hold on." He said, "Do you really believe the things you talk about on your show, or do you just do it for shock value?" And I paused for a moment, and he went on to say, I guess thinking he'd made me angry. He hadn't. I was just being reflective. I was thinking. He said, "Or are you just trying to get people to look into what you have to say?" And that's true to a certain extent. But I don't get up here and yell and scream and get upset sometimes because I'm trying to get people to pay attention, though it has that effect in some cases. I am upset on the radio sometimes and get passionate because I'm passionate about freedom and passionate about my children growing up and living in a free society and my unborn grandchildren growing up and living in a free society. And I want to leave the world a better place when I leave this planet, not in a worse position. But I thought about that, and I reflected on it, that we're on all these AM and FM stations across the country. We're the number one internet show on the internet, according to Shoutcast and other barometers, other meters, other gauges. We're clearly number one radio talk show. Routinely number one, even above music, on Shoutcast and other gauges. And there's all these people out there tuning in, and they don't understand that they don't have to believe me. They don't understand that they can simply go and look up 95% of what I talk about here on air. I mean, 5% of the time I editorialize on something or I tell a personal story about myself like I just did. And you don't know if that's true, but if I get up here and I tell you record cold temperatures in Washington, D.C., that's what the Associated Press is reporting today. Or if I get up here on the radio and I tell you that Google has patented and says they're now testing, as of 3 years ago, accessing the microphones and cameras on computers and dialing in and listening to everything you're saying and doing to build psychological algorithms and psychological databases on you.